Hello.
They can hear me now. Woo!
Well, hello.
We are audible.
Actually, I'm not lying. I'm not ready to be live
Oh.
yet. I gotta make myself bigger.
We had
Oh
we
my
had so
goodness.
much time to prep.
Right, I know. And then I just decided to be like, oh no, wait, I gotta be extra. Hold on just a moment.
Atraxis, we are very happy that you've been looking at the book. We should have more soon. We
Right
apparently
now, there's a lot of people that are sold out.
yes. I think they've been ordered. They're on their way. We'll make sure to keep that.
The miniatures, however, they are definitely on their way.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Looking forward to that one.
I was talking with some of the ordering people, and they're like, I was just talking with Matt a little bit. We are definitely getting minis, and the books will hopefully be coming soon.
forthwith. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to our Zulus. Now, normally I would say D&D stream, but today we're off the rails. We're doing other things. This is the Zulus RPG channel, where we're going to be talking about tabletop RPGs. You don't use pens on RPGs. That's blasphemy. Couple of things to sort of cover before we dive into it in earnest. Firstly, for our astute listeners, they might notice that we're at a slightly different time. We have changed our schedule, and it has been an absolute madhouse as of late with getting ready for Christmas. I think we had 200 orders yesterday. Alex and I shipped 45 copies of Root. Just Root. So, needless to say, it's a little crazy. That being said, we do apologize for those of you who might have missed this and are watching this as a VOD on Facebook or YouTube. But those of you who are live, hello and welcome. We're very much excited to be able to interact with you. I think this will be a better time for people to, like me, enjoying their dinner as they listen to us pontificate about RPG stuff. But for those of you who do not recognize us, my name is Rob. I am a dungeon master at, we'll call them game masters for now, at Zulu's Board Game Cafe. And I am joined above me on either side by a couple of delightful people. Jason, go ahead and wave to the audience and introduce yourself a little bit.
All right. I am also a master of game. And I work at Zulu's. I will run 5 days a week, like these at least 5 days,
Yeah.
unlike some others that run 6. But yes, working at the store and also running games online through Zoom for the most part.
Awesome.
But yes,
And
I've been
this
doing it
side,
for a number of
this
years.
side. I've got Alex above me.
Over
Yes, Alex above me. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Well, hello. Yes, I'm Alex. I am also one of the game masters. Currently, most of the game mastering that I do is the Dungeon and Dragon style, and I'm also running on Zoom. So, or we're just doing a whole bunch of D&D on Zoom. That's essentially all that I've been doing, and so I'm very excited to be jumping into the wondrous world of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, and it just as he said, let's go ahead and dive into it. So, some of you may have noticed that recently a brand new game came out, a video game called Cyberpunk 2077. What not all of you may know is that it is actually based off a pen and paper, a tabletop game called Cyberpunk. Now, Jason, would you mind telling us a little bit about the lineage of this fine and beautiful game?
Cyberpunk's been around for a while. It started as just Cyberpunk, and then it kind of evolved over the years. It's kind of had multiple iterations, and the world itself has evolved. It's always been in the distant future or semi-distant future.
Yeah, at this point, we're coming right on it.
The version I'm most familiar with is from the '80s, and that was Cyberpunk 2020, which was about a dystopic world. It took place in the year 2020. And so, yeah, it's a kind of a strange thing, but so this is kind of an alternate universe. Now, well, it is now. At this point, we're branching off in different ways. So they have like kind of starting in the 90s and changing direction.
Yeah, I was gonna say the kind of the split point is because in Fallout the kind of split point is, I want to say like the 50s or something like that. That's where the kind of the timelines diverged, and so in this one it's going to be our sort of diverging point is the 90s.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's always had a retro 80s, an 80s look to it because it was the 80s.
Yeah.
actually can I'll grab my book real quick. I've got the actual Cyberpunk 2020 book here, and you can see like the style is now like it was 80s cool at the time, but it is very it's even got the quote from Johnny Silverhand, played by Keanu Reeves in the new game, right on the front. Got the chips enhancements, got the attitude right, got the metal beneath my skin. I'm chipping in. So it's a dystopic world run by corporations. At least in the 2020 version, and you're kind of edge runners, these like people who tried to live outside of the system and took jobs from these horrible corporations.
You say edge runner. I can't help but notice that sounds a little bit like A, Netrunner, and B, Shadowrunner. I feel like this running is sort of a theme, and just by virtue of the similarities in styles and feel, in that they are sort of cyberpunk, dystopian, futuristic games, Shadowrun is going to be brought up, mostly because that's the game that I've been playing most recently. But I have some definite thoughts on the differences between the two, which I'm going to very much look forward to diving into later. But for now, let's go ahead. Continue your introduction to this delightful game.
Well, actually, that kind of brings up a point where it started. Cyberpunk, the kind of that genre, started mainly with William Gibson, the novels. In fact, Keanu Reeves is an old veteran because Johnny Mnemonic is one of his stories. But Neuromancer is the first real cyberpunk book involved. He wrote these stories about people hacking in and plugging their brains into machines and replacing their body with cybernetic parts. So that's where Cyberpunk really comes out of, and Cyberpunk actually was older than Shadowrun. Shadowrun just took hey, what if we took because there was a lot in that period of the later 80s, a lot of role-playing games were let's mix genres up. Look at what Warhammer did with Warhammer 40K.
Yeah.
What if we tried this? And so Shadowrun was a different take on that.
What if Cyberpunk but magic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had a good reason for it. It wasn't just
I feel like much in the same way that Cyberpunk's world is, I think, a really deep and rich and very fun thing. Shadowrun also has a deep and rich and wonderful thing, but there's a second leg that must be stood on, and that is mechanics. But again, we keep getting ahead of ourselves. I'm sorry. So we had Cyberpunk, and then I think it was Cyberpunk 2013 was one of them.
2013 was the
Yep,
first
and then Cyberpunk 2020, and we are now to. Oh yeah. Oh, don't worry about those.
Your notes.
No, those are the receipts. So we are to Cyberpunk. Yeah, Cyberpunk Red, which I love it. What I love about this is the cover is actually in many ways very similar to each other. It still has that delightful sort of. You've got kind of edgy leather and plastic and neon. The cyberpunk is literally the same word, which I love. The role-playing game of the dark future, which, honestly, more and more, it seems like it's not that far off. But anyway, let's not get hung up on that.
And also, role-playing game of the dark future on this one.
Oh, nice.
So almost every section is similarly titled.
Yes.
In the Red and the Cyber. I was comparing the two a lot just because I could. And I was curious, and it was interesting to see. And there's a lot of tributes because, the first story in Red is a short story to get you immersed in the world, and there is a short story in 2020, and it's it says that it's 37 years later, right? That doesn't matter. No, it's 57 years later because it's 2077. Doing my math.
No, I think this one is set before 77, a couple years.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because I think Johnny Mnemonic, or not Johnny Mnemonic, we were just, Johnny Silverhand is still alive in this version, right? Or in Red, correct? In fact, isn't the reason it's called Red because of the nuclear bombs that were dropped?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't done as much of the world reading in Red as I did, but it's in the jump start.
This book is not small. This is not an insignificant amount of text to sort of dive into. Densely packed, which is actually one of the things that's very fun about this. So yeah.
And they keep a lot of mechanics and stuff similar. And there's stuff I really always enjoyed in Cyberpunk, like the life path system is still there. So life path, every character you get to choose, you choose events and you roll dice to kind of choose your background and see background things that happen to your character. And like you can choose on certain things, or they say choose or roll.
Yeah.
And every character gets every character role, which is like a class, gets a different sub topic, that they get to delve into. If you're a rocker boy,
I love their archetypes in this. That's another thing. So we misspoke a little bit a couple weeks ago on the. Well, I didn't, but anyway, no. We misspoke a little bit on the Zulu Shopping Network, which is every Friday starting at 6, where we were talking about this game, and it was mentioned that there were some classes. This game is not a class-based system, as far as I understand, which is a little bit interesting. For those of you who mostly play D&D, I know that the first time I started branching off into games that weren't D&D, the concept of not having a class was very sort of like, oh my goodness. But so much of the game is designed around how you increase your stats and skills, and those will be increased in whatever way you want. And I really should have done my research on this, but Jason, that's why you're here. You're our expert. This is an XP system where at the end of your session you get an amount of XP, which you can then use to increase your stats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mainly your skills. But you can also add more cyber to your system, but there's drawbacks to that. But it's always fun to get a new eye implant or new chest hair.
I found it. I found the charts you're talking about. So these are these the charts you're talking about with the sort of your life happening?
Yeah. And as far as I know, this may be a misnomer, but I think Cyberpunk was the first one to really delve into this, and kind of a lot of other systems copied that. So it's good to see that, and D&D has a little bit of that in their 5th edition.
In Xanathar's Guide to Everything, there's actually a very robust sort of future builder. In addition, all the backgrounds have their sort of charts of the interactions between different people. So yeah, I think honestly it's a very useful thing to have for creating characters, especially for someone who gets just sort of thrown into it and they're like, I don't know what to do with this character. You can be like, well, let's figure out how they got to the point where they are. Because a lot of times you don't pick up with your character having, just begun. Often your character has had a life beforehand, and so letting those sort of things inform what you're doing helps a lot in sort of deciding how to play your character. In many ways, it's... in Cyberpunk 2077, you have your sort of 3 starting spots, and during the video game, you'll have different sort of dialogue options from your history. In the same way that this will help you sort of inform where you came from, will help inform how you sort of move through the game as it progresses.
Yeah, and one of the other things that's different between like a Cyberpunk game, and it's a different setting. In D&D, you tend to start off as, if you're playing a first-level character, you're just Joe Schmo wanting to be an adventurer.
Yeah.
Whereas you're playing, like, you're kind of a character in media res, in the middle of things, where you've already been an you've already been doing this thing, and you have a rich past. So, like, you will have ex-girlfriends or boyfriends or...
I actually just got to that. We are in the lovers section. What are they going to do about... Oh, no, there's something else. Sorry. Here we go. What happened...
You have, like...
There's a lovers section? Oh, my goodness.
Your lover died in an accident. Your lover mysteriously vanished. It just didn't work out. This is magical. I love this so much.
Wow.
You can end up with a whole string of, you can have a James Bond every time I go on an adventure, I leave broken hearts behind.
Well, and what's fun is like the whole system is built like a flowchart. Like I'm still just scroll. Okay, here we go. Like it has it's a chart. Roll on here and then keep going. Then roll on here and then keep going. And
oh, and we know that you do always mention that you enjoy
I love a good chart.
Extra roll stuff.
I love a good chart. And these look at this. Pick a number between 1 and 10, Alex.
Let's do 7.
7. Your family is involved in a long-term conspiracy, organization, or association, such as a crime family or revolutionary group.
I always knew my dad was fishy.
Exactly. Well, or fishy, or like you were part of it as well, and then and then as a game master, all of a sudden you're like, ooh, I can at any point bring this up and have it be a thing. It's a double-edged sword because on the one hand you can be like, well, I'd like to go to my family to get what resources I can, but on the other hand I can be like, well, you're part of a family and the rival gang has come to collect their dues. which is, I think, loads of fun.
I've always had a soft spot for the dystopian games. I mean, I've played a lot of them in my time just because there are tons. Especially in the 80s and early 90s, a lot of them were coming out. There's like, then there's supernatural ones and so on. But Cyberpunk is like the granddaddy, and there is this immense, like, there's a lot of politics involved.
Yes.
It can be. Obviously the whole aspect of people being exploited by corporations is inherently political. But yeah, and the adventures they give, and you're playing somebody who just kind of, usually a fairly selfish, but you can play like a nomad, which is because there's wastelands outside the cities. And so it's a Mad Max out there.
Oh, yeah.
And, there's families that bond together in their armored Winnebagos, and you get to trick out your vehicles and go a little bit nuts. You can also play an authority figure where you're playing as one of the security guards, or maybe an ex-security guard, or a detective, or a cop. And so you can end up on some weird, like, there's even like corporate people. You can be a corporate. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But you're good at leadership and good at getting the right people for the right job.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say you mentioned the being a cop thing, and actually, it was one of the things I was really enjoying about it. We talked about this a little bit the other day, but you can be a cop, and that means you can call in reinforcements, which I think is loads of fun. Like that's a thing that you have as an option.
Yeah.
I hate this.
Once again, I've read a lot of role-playing games in my time, so I'm trying to go, was that Shadowrun like 2nd edition, or was that Cyberpunk? But I know that there's a lot of things for like running a medtech team. You could just run an entire group that their job, because like they have these things where the ambulance drivers in the Cyberpunk world, they only treat the really rich. But you have to go in with guns and like
because if they're injured, that means that something bad has happened.
Yeah. So Cyberpunk I kind of see as like you're running it. It's going to be very Die Hard-esque. You might be the ones doing the bank robbery type of situation, but you may also be the people rescuing those people in the situation, which is a lot of fun. Whenever I run Cyberpunk, I usually have that ticking clock, and usually it's a literal ticking something, just to keep that story going. Most of the like Gibson stories, like you think of Giant Demonic, not many people have seen the movie anymore, but not that it ever was that huge. But he has the ticking time bomb of the data in his head.
Yep.
It's gonna blow it,
because he had to extend his memory capacity to what, 128 kilobytes?
Yeah, oh man, it was like, it was huge.
It was massive, and it was going to burn his brain out.
That's hilarious. So looking through Cyberpunk, that's my favorite thing, is you can look at like cameras, and they show how many, what the capacity of like a digital camera would be in the far future of 2020, and it is, whoo boy, it's good.
Nice.
Yeah, medtech is one of the options. I'm trying to figure out what exactly these options are. Let's see.
You want to see the future
roles.
There you go.
Oh, there's different
look
roles.
at that future phone.
Ooh, I love a future phone.
It opens up and shuts.
Yeah. Oh man.
Apparently they're bringing that back. They're having like folding screen phones that are returning.
yeah.
So it's weird
Yep,
stuff.
We are going back.
Full circle, baby.
Sweet.
Let's see. A pocket computer has chip slots and holds up to 100 pages of alphanumeric memory.
Ooh, 100 pages. 100 pages.
100 pages.
I've almost. So what's funny is Cyberpunk 2077 is, I think, on PlayStation it was 100 gigs. For PC, I only had to download, I think, 60. Or there was patches and I didn't notice. It told me that I was downloading 60. So, how many of those text files can you fit in one Cyberpunk 2077?
Oh, I know.
Yeah, that's kind of the interesting thing, is that sort of exponential growth. But at the same time, like it feels very much like the future that we kind of expected to see. So it still feels very futuristic in a lot of ways, to me anyway. So and that's actually one of the things that I think this book does a really good job in sort of in sort of helping with. And I need to change this chair; it's squeaking and driving me nuts. If that's too loud, let me know. I'm gonna change it. But anyway,
I'm not hearing it.
Oh, perfect. Then thank goodness. So the world that this thing has built is beautiful. and I don't know if it really communicates it well, but you've got, so this is one of the chapters. You got the big splash picture, you got your line of text, you've got your thing. But over here, it's just some ads. And I love it. Because it's in-world advertisements. And it's that way with every chapter. Like, I think there's, oh man. Oh yeah, this one's great. It's like you're looking through just one of the an internet page. I'm having such a hard time doing opposites.
Web page.
So I feel like this game does a really good job with that. And not only does it do it that way in the advertisement it adds, but then also in the names of the chapters. So like you've got the Friday night firefight is the combat chapter. I think getting it done is your welcome to the dark futures, the history chapter. Like it has such fun sort of names for each of the chapters. Oh goodness, I meant to look up netrunning because again I have beef with Shadowrun. But yeah, I don't think I'm ready to dive into that quite yet.
I didn't dive into it. That's always been one of the harder things in any cyberpunk world.
Yeah, hacking is such a weird amorphous thing.
Well, the problem with it in most games, I cannot, because like I said, I skipped that because I wasn't focusing on it. But it tends to take one player away from all the other players.
Yes, very much so. So let's go ahead and
I agree. Ataraxis Station mentioned that the layout of a role-playing book alone can make you want to read it front to back. This book is especially built for that.
Oh, it's so well written.
It's an immersive story, and then it kind of it takes you through character generation, then takes you through the rules, and I do like that because I was looking at it mainly at a PDF.
I will say this, and I will probably say this for much longer. This is the best formatted RPG I have ever played, and I have played a lot. I actually like collecting RPG books. I have 2nd edition D&D, 3rd, 3.5 Pathfinder. I skipped 4th edition, 5th edition. As much as I love and play it, they could learn some things from this book. Oh my gosh! So in the first page of getting it done, which is the base mechanics, kind of where I jumped in because I'd looked through some of this stuff, but I was like, I want to get into the nitty gritty of the mechanics of this game. The very first thing that I notice is in the margins, there's little guy poking out that says data. You will find the full rules for combat in Friday Night Firefight, the Friday Night Firefight chapter on page, and this is in large, bold, red text, page 167. What? Yeah. Like that, just that small detail of, this is not combat, this is where you'll find combat, the name of the chapter, and the page number, just there. Also, it goes on to anytime there is a thing that is important, it bolds it. Every time, like the way it's laid out, all the chunks are beautiful. And then it has in large sort of blocks of text with a square around it. When combat starts, everyone rolls initiative. Your initiative is reflex, REF, plus a D10. And that's just a giant block of text. So when I think to myself, what's going on with combat? Where do I go? What do I do? All I have to do is glance at this sheet, and it's like, boom, I know what I need to know. On the next page, your turn equals 1 move action, 1 action. Below that, bam, full chart. It has page numbers for all of the actions and where they are. I have never before looked at a book and been so completely comfortable with where I'm going to find the information. Like, I was blown away. Even more so than the mechanics, because I haven't admittedly dove into the mechanics as much as I would like.
But you know where to find the mechanics if you are like completely lost. Like,
the other thing I'll point out is, did you get the starter set, Rob?
I did not. I did not.
Jumpstart kit. Yeah. So in the Jumpstart kit, which actually you might want to.
Do we want to here? Let me go. Let's go ahead and do a little reworking here. Let me turn these off. Let me switch over to this. We'll do. Let's do transition there.
Yep. I'm going to flip on to
we're so very well organized. All right, you can flip.
Perfect. All right. So right now, so this actually is one of the maps that came with the Jumpstart kit. I'm going to move my Jumpstart kit. It's a lot of glare. Sorry, because I have some lights here, but I'm going to pull my camera back up so you can see. This is the Jumpstart kit. And I'm gonna unbox it for you guys.
So also, again, we'll get more of them soon.
Yes.
They're on their way.
So this is actually like this is an easy reference sheet, and this is specifically for basics. They got the net running stuff. I have not run it yet and test some example NPCs. Like the NPCs just fit. Boom, you got like all you need, and these are the sample characters for running the basic adventure. You know, they give you like different characters. They open up. You know, they flip them over so these don't open up, but you actually get to customize your beginning character. This is just example characters. It also came with fun little holders for stuff you'll see later. Only dice you need, D10s, D6s, and these came with it. They're cool. As you can see, Q Workshop dice, which was that was probably one of the main incentives of me getting this. And then, of course, the books. My books are a little bit squished because they have been read multiple times. But there's the rule book and the world book, which is just background.
Now, Jason, could you show me the profile of those books? Because those look pretty meaty for a starter box.
They're decently meaty. They're not super thick, but they are not thin. And they are all color. You know, and this is just how the world works. This one right here is just the world book. Here, I'll show it even. So I'm gonna kind of try and, it kind of, I mean, it just has everything about Night City. And it's great for, just getting the, I wasn't sure which book to start with at first, but of course I went the world book. But this is just the rules. You have kind of how to make your edge runner. You can kind of see it has a bunch of, it's a pretty book. And it's, for a starter set's really good.
It's amazing.
Yeah, same format as the other book, more maps. Ugh. As you can see, they're double-sided here. You got like inside of a nightclub, which you very much need. And then these are. I didn't pop them out yet. Yeah, that's what these are for. These are standees for.
So you can have lagoons.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, and then this is the outdoor city, and then you got the nice little bit of the wasteland road. Yeah. Oh yeah, I went back to me because we can go back to that if we need to, but yeah, if you guys want to see something else. But...
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
We got a shout out in chat for Atraxis Station wanting to DM, but has always been intimidated by the idea of DMing. But yes, I totally agree. The amount of information and quick availability is a very useful tool.
One of the other things I'll point out about running like a futuristic or modern setting game is it's a lot easier to find information. You're not having if you're running in a pre-existing world like D&D, if you're running like Theron, which is the Forgotten Realms, that can be intimidating because it's a whole universe that nothing like. When they break the law, exactly what happens? Like it can be like, yeah.
Whereas yeah, whole pantheon of gods to worry about.
Yeah, you have a base understanding of how reality works, even if it is like cyber reality. You can even play the video game that'll help you get like, okay, I get how this looks and how I'm going to describe it. And also the players coming in will have a similar knowledge. But like, so I felt that makes this a little more approachable to run. Definitely, I think to play in too. And it can be overwhelming in ways because it is slightly different. But I think it just you know more what your character can do. I'm going to go to the corner store and buy a soda or something. Yeah. They can do that, whereas like in a D&D world, it's like, what do I eat again?
Now the one thing, so I had been running a Shadowrun game, and I did use the past tense on purpose because I discovered that now partially it's that we're living in a very stressful time. Role-playing games are a great way to unwind, and it was feeling sort of slow, and I wasn't feeling like people were entertained by it, because one of the things I discovered is I play by the seat of my pants. I run games by the seat of my pants. The reason I like charts is because on occasion, things happen. What things happen? I don't know. Let's see what happens. I'm going to warn you now, Atraxis, prepare. So there's a lot of questions you may not think about. Like, for instance, what kind of security doors do you have in this facility? Are they maglocks? If they are, how do people get through them? Is it a key code or a card? Because if it's a card, as soon as they take out a guard, they've got that card now. Do the guards have trackers on their system so that there's like a centralized place that knows there are? Are there cameras? Are those cameras protected? These are all things that you need to know before you dive into it, and they're not the things you can come up with on the fly. That being said, if you just think about sort of how security systems are set up, and admittedly, Shadowrun did have a whole system with like different tiers of security and like what they would have and how they would set it up and all that stuff. So as long as you prepare, it'll be perfectly fine. There's a lot of good resources there for you, but you need to prepare.
Everything that you do, whenever you're DMing, you always got to prepare. Even if you're flying by the seat of your pants, you also have to have like kind of a general idea of like a storyline. And then fly by the seat.
But at the same time, like for me, because I've been living and breathing D&D for 20 years now, like just jumping into a thing and being like, all right, what kind of cool story things would happen? How would it go? I don't know how many times I've been watching a TV show, and before when a cliched line comes out, I'll say it because I don't really write scripts. But like, so because I've lived and breathed D&D so well, I can wing it, no problem. I'm not as familiar with these sort of settings and worlds, so there is a level of preparation that I didn't make, and that was on me. Now, that being said, Shadowrun has so many complicated interwoven systems that are poorly explained. I love the setting. I love the fact that there's magic and cyber stuff, and it's such a beautiful and robust world. You can have spirits fighting against androids, with dudes with cybernetic arms trying to arm wrestle dragons that own megacorps. I love the world. It's so beautiful, but I have such a hard time with the mechanics. For instance, the invisibility spell gives you invisibility X, where X is the level of your magic, and the invisibility status makes it so that it is that difficulty level that you need to beat to be able to see a person. Now, all the invisibility spell says is you gain the invisibility status equal to your magic rating, or I think successes, because normally... Anyway. Now, invisibility is under statuses. You have to go find statuses and then read that, but that doesn't always necessarily make sense. If you want to try and bust through a mana barrier, there are 3 to 4 places that you've got to get through, including one of which is like 2 solid pages of breaking through barricades, because for shooting through walls, that's very intricate and very interesting, because you're like, oh, if I have this gun, I'm going to shoot a this size hole, and it'll get so big so that I can like stick my arm through or my finger through, and there's very detailed information about that. And I need to have made sure that I read that to make sure it works. Sorry, I've got on to Shadowrun and I have been in a fight recently, and we're taking a little bit of a break, and I'm sure I'll go back to it. But
Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
I am tempted.
I agree with you. I think Shadowrun's always had that problem. Speaking of somebody who's played since first edition, I played first, second, a little bit of third in Shadowrun, and Shadowrun always got to me because it was very like. It felt like all these different systems, like the net running was not related to the magic, was not related to the physical world, and so you'd end up with, and they're all constantly right there. It also made it a horrible, hard thing to run an adventure, because you could set up an adventure and a net runner could just destroy it. A decker would just like destroy everything, or a wizard, because wizards had around.
I had an adventure where they went up to this thing. It was this. There was going to be this handoff game where like they were switching between people with this package, and then there was going to be a distraction. And while the distraction was happening, they have to try and figure out. I decided to throw some dragon cultists in because there was a dragon skull being auctioned, and they're like, "Oh man, this is going to be crazy!" And like, "Oh yeah, you're going to go out the main entrance, at the back entrance. There's chaos, all this stuff." And they're like, "I cast invisibility on all of us." What? Like, yeah, we're invisible now. Like, but what about all the cameras and stuff? No, it's the improved invisibility, so the cameras can't see us. Like, cool, I guess you walk out the front door or whatever? And they're like, yeah, no, we do. I'm like, oh, cool.
Having too many options. I mean, 5th edition, you can run into that too, where you're like, oh, I didn't think of all the options. So that one option, sometimes it's great. And you're like, okay, you outthought the whole adventure. and you, especially when it's a clever use of a spell that you thought that either they had but didn't think of it. That's like, all right, I pat the players in the back, but when it's just like, like I said, Shadowrun always felt, I love the setting so much, and I just have never gone back to it. I'll read the books and stuff, but I just haven't played it.
Whereas,
but like I said, but taking it back to Cyberpunk,
I was just saying,
one of the things is it's an elegant system. It's a D10 basically system.
Took the words out of my mouth.
D10, you add your skill, you compare it to the results, and it actually flows really fast.
Yeah.
It's all like D20. It's like the D20 in Fifth, where you roll the D20 for everything, but there really aren't exceptions to it. Damage tends to be D6s. There's a couple other exceptions, but they're not too far. They're not constant. Where you're just like it's just a couple of exceptions, and they make sense. But yeah, and hit points. You have hit points, but you also have wound levels, so you get affected by the amount of damage you take, which would not make sense. Like in D&D, you're superheroes. You until you get that last hit, you're completely functioning for the most part with conditions. Yeah. Whereas in Cyberpunk, you get shot in the arm. You got you're lightly wounded. And you're dealing with that.
Oh dang!
Unless you have like nano surgeons in your nanodocs and stuff like that.
I actually so speaking of skill checks, and again going back to the delightful sort of elegance is exactly the word for it. So in Getting It Done, which is the chapter on how skills work, it details the fact that you'll take your stat and your skill, and then you add those together plus the roll of a D10. And again, like I can just like I need to just show you this picture or this page. There are two giant blocks of text that tell you to either roll your stat plus your skill plus a D10 versus the defender's stat plus their skill plus a D10, or the attacker's stat plus the skill plus a D10 versus a difficulty value, which I love DVs because they just make more sense than difficulty classes. That's not neither here nor there. And then just below that, it gives you an example of your potential difficulty values. So like you have a simple task. This is something that most people can do without thinking, but might be hard for a child. Beautiful description. That's a difficulty value of 9. And then it goes down and details all the different difficulties up to a 29. And just because a lot of times, so often, especially with kids, we'll introduce them to the idea of here are your skills, here's the different stats that come with them. They're like, okay, cool, I've got a +7. Is that good? Is that bad? Or somebody's just like, I have a +3. That's the best thing ever. And they're like, you're like, well, it's not really. But they're like, with no context. This gives you context. Also, one of my other favorite things is the picture just next to it. This nice gentleman here.
Oh, there we go.
He's using his cybernetic arm to put on his eye makeup. Because if you're going to go into battle, you might as well look darn good doing it.
That's always been, Cyberpunk is always like, you're horrible people, but you look good doing it.
Exactly.
That's kind of like, it's all about style. In fact, one of your stats is cool. Like, it's how you hold yourself together. But if you're a low cool during a firefight, you're going to be the one crying and wetting yourself. Whereas if you have a high cool, you're going to have that explosion behind you and you're walking away from it, not phased, Yeah. And also you're wearing your sunglasses at night, and that's very important in Cyberpunk.
So the one thing I'm not necessarily as keen on is the character sheet, just because I don't like a profile character sheet. Also, there's so much text in there, and there's a lot of big blocks. That being said, I have definitely seen worse designed character sheets. And it's just a personal preference.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I just said I kind of like it, but
the profile
I'm a sucker for the layout, like the sideways character sheets. Just shut them out. But I also like how they do the cyber tech on the sheet there, in the character sheet. I mean,
the skeleton it's with all your locations. Yes.
And you show where the stuff is. I
do also really enjoy that.
Yeah. Also, kind of like the idea of like having a little storyboard where you got each one. It's like tattoo parlors is basically what street docks and stuff are. So you go in there and you're like, you know what? I want a golden hand. It won't be real gold. I can't afford that. But maybe you might even come off the street, or you confiscated somebody else's cyberware and you have it installed on yourself.
Yeah.
Just because you like that gold hand that one guy got.
Yeah.
So you went back and took it from him. Not usually not a nice thing, but you know.
Oh no, I was just thinking. I got to a part in Cyberpunk 2077 where there's they're called Ripper Docs, by the way, where there's a Ripper Doc that has given this gal a new faceplate. And you can hear it through the door, so you don't really know what's going on. But it's one of those things where like at first she can't open her mouth, but then she kind of can. But she's like, "Why is my vision fuzzy?" It's like, "Oh, well, the person you had this faceplate before you had a slightly longer face, so it's pulling on your optic nerves. But it'll adjust eventually, maybe." It's like, ugh, brutal.
Yeah. One of the crazy things is Cyberpunk would come out with these Chromebooks. These were like just new gear for the next year.
Ooh.
So like they would be all these new cyber. Some of them were hilarious. Like, you know, you have like right here. There's a remote eye.
Tell me it has spider legs. Does it have spider legs or wheels?
Yeah. No, just little tripod. So you sit down, you can see through it. You pop your eye out and leave it in there. And they have like all sorts of other things. Like one of the dumber ones that just hilarious, you know, just be like, I want to be arrested. I don't know if it's in this book. Yeah, it is. The kill display. So you can have like a glowing tattoo of how many people you've killed. Of course, you're probably full of crap, but you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
What I remember as a kid when this came out, another good phone upgrade. You get there is another put it our way. Yeah, there you go. There's a nice futuristic cell phone for you.
Yeah.
And then there's the nanobug thing, but yeah, that one or drone. They introduced the concept of exotics in this book, which always seemed like total sci-fi to me. That people would try and turn themselves into animals. These are not actual animals. These are like you can get you can get the. I mean, obviously the art is subpar. But you see, you could get the features of animals.
So you turn yourself into a captain. That is absolutely something people would do.
Yeah, and some of them are like, you could, it's all getting, if you wanted to, you could become an orc. And like, everything that's like, nobody do that. Now you look at it and go, yeah, I think people would. You'd have whole gangs of people getting these teeth implants, and yeah. Or I look like a dragon, just using cybernetics mixed with plastic surgery. That was one of the things.
That would be so dope. Oh my
gosh. So we've waxed poetic a little bit, Alex, and you know relatively little about this game. What questions do you have for us about this game so far?
Well, you guys were saying that you're mostly using, or that it's mostly a D10 system, and most of the damage is going to be in the form of D6s.
Mm-hmm.
So while also, I guess more of my real question is, while D&D has like strength, dex, con, like how similar are the abilities to the abilities for a character?
Like, are you talking about like dex and all that?
Yeah, so like dex, con, intelligence.
Yeah,
your attributes in the game are intelligence, reflex. No. Oh, they're just the 3 letters. Is it reflex or?
Yes.
Yeah, intelligence, reflex, dexterity, technology.
Yeah, it's your knowledge of tech stuff. So
okay.
Like, being able to use a computer.
Yep. Cool.
To be able to adjust it.
Cool, which I love as a stat. Will, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's your willpower. Luck, move, body, and then I believe it's empathy.
Empathy, yeah, and that. Yeah. So if you have a low empathy, the more cyber tech you get in your system, the lower your humanity degrades, and it leads to you being irritable. So people with a lot of it, or even just not being very empathetic in the first place, and they get cyber, it'll take away from the empathy, and you cannot roll more on your persuasion attempts, any kind of like, I think anything of intimidation type attempts, than you have in that stat. So you and if you go completely below 0, you're a cyber psycho, and you're no longer a player character.
Just to the left of your empathy. So empathy is interesting because it does have a line in the middle that says out of. So you're meant to put one number on one side and the other number on the other side. So it's X out of X. Just next to that is your humanity, which is
a derived stat. So there's a couple derived attributes too. So
which is a lot of fun.
10 times your empathy.
Yeah, and then much like you'd expect, you've got skills that sort of fall into different category. Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, I'm just looking at this these skills. So skills are broken down into a couple different sections. You have your awareness skills, like concentration, conceal, reveal objects, lip reading, and then you've got perception and tracking. Then you have body skills like athletics, contortionist, dance, endurance. Now, Jason, I've noticed that a couple of these skills are bolded. Are those sort of higher tier skills, and then there are sub skills underneath them?
I believe they're ones you cannot use.
Oh, untrained.
Untrained, yeah.
Or is it the bolded ones are the ones that you can do untrained?
Once again, I was flipping through 2 different games. So I can kind of
we're all over the place. We're learning with you guys though. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
So yeah. On a kind of similar note, because I feel like this is something that everyone should always wonder. So you can get critical success and critical failure, but unlike D&D, if you get a critical, you can still, if you're quite skilled, still succeed at something if you get a critical failure, and if you're very, very bad at something, you don't necessarily succeed when you get a crit, because with your D10 roll, if you roll a 1, you roll a D10 again, and you then subtract the second roll from the first roll. So if you rolled a 1 and then another 1, that's actually great, because you're only going to reduce your skill by 1, which means you just whatever your skill plus attribute is, that'll be what you get. On the other hand, if you get a 10, you then roll your d10 again and add that to your roll. So if you roll a 10 and then a 1, you got 11. Your skill is relatively low. That's not guaranteed success. So there are some things that are just too hard for you to succeed at. Get good, Scrub.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a fun thing. I love when mechanics are slightly different in games. Too many times they're just sort of copy pastes of the same thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, a lot of it is very similar to the original Cyberpunk. It's just refined. And I've always liked Cyberpunk, but everybody always wanted to play Shadowrun once Shadowrun came out.
Yep.
And I would push Cyberpunk because of the fact that the rule system was even though the system was older, it was an easier to run system, and now it's even easier. And I think more people, because it's finally getting that exposure. Like I said, there's NPCs from 2020 that are in Red and in 2077.
Yep.
Johnny Silverhand being one of them.
Yep.
There's a bunch of them. I'm sure Raish Bartmoss makes an appearance. And there's a bunch. There's like stand-ins from Mike Pondsmith, and that's one of them. Raish Bartmoss. I believe it's Raish, R-A-C-H-E. I'm just, it's one of those you read so much that you
right.
kind of are not sure if you've not ever heard it really out loud. But yeah, there's a lot of lore. And you don't have to pull it all in. It's like Johnny Silverhand's just a rock star, effectively. I mean, he's more than that, but he's also a rebel and a bunch of other stuff too. And he does a lot of stuff illegal on the side, like everybody in Cyberpunk. But yeah, and the other thing that's interesting, we were talking about like kind of the class system of Cyberpunk, and there are roles that give you special abilities. Like you said, the cops they can call them backup. If you're a solo, you have someone like samurai or a mercenary, you get an awareness of your surroundings that gives you a bonus in combat. That you're less likely to be caught off guard. And everyone, you can be a media, which is a reporter. You have credibility that you can use to influence, uses influence. And so there's a lot of different stuff going on. But you really get to customize and look at your character. I believe, I want to say the Nomads get a thing for modifying the vehicles. In the original one, they had a family. They could call upon their crazed biker family / weird,
And we are not doing character creation nearly enough justice. I really thoroughly enjoy the way that they have designed this character. I guess does he have a team, or is
Well, there were like 10 people listed as designers.
Okay.
His son is one of the big ones that helps him. But Mike Pondsmith is the main. I should have compared the names to the original edition. I did not. I just recognized the ones I recognize. Mike Pondsmith, and Mike Pondsmith, like we've mentioned before, but he's come into the store a couple times. Yeah. And but I know from talking to him that his son Dolly. I'm drawing a boy. I'm gonna look at the name.
Dolan?
No, his son. I'm going for a different name here. I was looking at the names. There we go. Designed by Mike Pondsmith, James Hutt, Cody Pondsmith. There we go.
Okay.
Jay Parker, Jay Gray, David Ackerman, and Jay Kolich. And and I'm now.
No, and the character creation
David
is
Ackerman was one of the original designers.
one of the very, very fun one to look through. And speaking of Mike Pondsmith, he has a YouTube series of him running a game of Cyberpunk, and I think that's honestly like with I think part of the reason D&D has had such an incredible sort of explosion over the last couple of years is because the YouTube presence and there's like access to watching people play is massive. And so if you want to see what does a game of Cyberpunk Red look like being played as it was meant to, like you can't get much more like from the source than the lead designer.
Dude who made it.
Exactly. So seeing how he plays it, I'm really looking forward to watching those just to see kind of his vision as far as it goes. We wandered off from it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What was that?
Oh no, I'd be curious because his son has worked on it. His wife was one of the original designers of the game too.
Oh
Lisa.
yeah.
And
she seems like a nice
she
lady.
was also one of the people that's worked on this one. She's not one of the main writers, but she is associated with the production of the book itself.
Yeah.
And I know she's had a ton of influence on a lot of his projects, and he's done so many role-playing games. I mean, he's one of the original designers of some of the bigger advanced Dungeons and Dragons books.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah, he co-wrote Oriental Adventures, which is no longer easy to say, but that was the book with the character location. I have several of his older games. I don't have them out. Like Dream Park was one of my absolute favorites. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a fan, but yeah, I didn't realize it actually until I've collected role-playing games forever, and I didn't realize. Oh my god!
Wait a minute, these names look familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry we keep wandering around this. Both of us are very excited for this game, but Alex, what other questions do you have for us?
I mean, like, so far I'm just mostly just listening to see like all of the cool things that like what are the main differences between you guys are already kind of explaining the main differences mechanic wise and also definitely story wise the differences between D&D and Cyberpunk, since most of the stuff that I do is just mostly D&D, mostly fantasy related. I set up a little design over here so I could be stuck inside
surrounded
of a forest.
by trees.
I'm surrounded by trees in a forest. Are there forests in Cyberpunk, or are they all burnt to a crisp?
No, there are forests. That's actually one of the locations that's interested me the most. I would love to do a one-shot or something set in Washington, because the area of Washington that's described in the starter's Jumpstart kit is very interesting, where it's completely dominated by the military and their military experiments on animals, which has created a bunch of horrible, weird creatures that some of them are cybernetic, but they escape sometimes, and there are like people that have to go out and bring back these escaped animals, or just or even like rob these military, because the military is run by the different corporations that are opposed to each other. Yeah. So each military base doesn't necessarily like the other ones, and there's a whole edge running thing that can happen right there that I find that it's you can edge in the shadow with that one.
Well, I would say the biggest difference mechanically from like say a D&D versus Cyberpunk is that there isn't a class system. Like I said, when you build your character, you pick how you want to input your stats and how you want to get your skills, and then as you play, you'll end up getting experience points, which you can then use to increase those skills as you're going through. So that's the biggest thing. The other thing that's kind of interesting is your saves aren't their own separate things. They're generally tied to a specific skill, in the same way that you don't have an attack bonus in the same kind of way that you would think. You have a skill that is firearms or melee combat. So they've taken that kind of concept, and actually the skills as they exist in D&D is actually a very easy way to think of it. But instead of say you're having an attack whole separate attack mechanic, it's just rolled into the skills. So like in D&D, if you had a like a pole arms skill or a bows skill, actually it'd probably be string weapons,
range.
I would assume, because thrown versus missile, I think, would probably be the distinction. It's the level of granularity that you end up wanting for the thing. But yeah, that's I think what I really like, and that's why actually I think it's always very fascinating to see that changeover from D&D to a lot of other role-playing games that don't necessarily fall into that sort of class-based system. The West End games, Star Wars, Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, all of the White Wolf games, they are these systems where there's you have your attributes, you have your skills, and then and that's how you start with a variety of different ways, and then as you play, you get sort of a resource which you can then put into different things to increase them. So if you want to be someone who's really good at wearing, actually this is a bad example. I was thinking of like the a lot of times when I play. What is the game that has the Skyrim? I would a lot of times like to do heavy armor and necromancy, which is a thing that's harder to do in things like D&D. It's doable now more than it was in previous editions. In previous editions, D&D was very much you were tropes, and that's where you existed in. But I feel like, especially with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, they've sort of leaned away from that notion, where it's more that you have a couple of different bonuses that you can put into things. So in many ways, actually, it's leaning itself more towards that. Now, it is still class-based with archetypes, but even then, you can slap together a couple different classes, and you can get something kind of fascinating. But these games are going to be even farther kind of away from that, in that, again, pick your skills, pick your stats, go nuts.
Yeah, I would say one of the other things that makes them different is a big chunk to me is the fact that you can change midstream a lot easier, because you're kind of going to go, like, I didn't take a lot of perception, but man, I want my character to not be taken unaware again, because that happened that one time and I hated it. So you're going to pull your points into not being, upping your perception, or, it's like, yeah, I thought I would be the acrobat, but I kind of every once in a while need to shoot my gun at a decent target. So I'm going to practice and get better at that one thing. And so, or, just I want to be the best bow. I want to be Hawkeye. And I'm good now, but I want to make sure nobody's better than me. Yeah. I mean, you can easily make Hawkeye in a Cyberpunk game. It'd be very different, but it'd be a lot of fun. Because there's a lot of ways of pulling something like that off. I mean, you could easily do, like, I want to be Black Widow. I want to be Hawkeye. The Avengers could kind of, I mean, obviously not Thor and Hulk. Kind of.
Honestly, with a lot of the cybernetics, you could make Hulk work.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with the cyber psychosis.
we didn't even cover cybernetics. That's a whole other animal. There's
a lot of choices. And I brought up a little bit, but like you can replace eyes, get multiple options put into your eyes. And like
dermal plating, skeletal reinforcement, nanobots that repair yourself while you're going, and we didn't even touch the whole hacking aspect. Oh my gosh!
Well, we kind of mentioned it, but
we did.
Yeah, you can wire your reflexes so that you exist in a different time frame than other people. So you can go kind of nuts. But one of the things, like I said, it all boils down to the same world. You're not dealing with any character can get that stuff, but like. Wired reflex, or the reflex modification, is the one that's going to eat your humanity like crazy, because you the more you perceive yourself as different, that's usually the bigger humanity hits. So like the things that make you perceive differently than you would normally, where you start forgetting what you were, is what's going to start like that downfall. So but you want those things. Those are the fun ones. I want to have Wolverine claws. Come on. You can do it.
You can get Wolverine claws.
What are they called?
I think they're mantis blades.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, we are getting
so many cyberpunk type games that they blend. Yeah. I know in like Torg, I think it was, they were called Wolvers. Or one of the games.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I actually was running a game with some kids today, and I had said that one of the rough and tough NPCs said, "Yeah, get out of here, bub," and he immediately was like, "I didn't know Wolverine was in this city. What the heck?" And
I was like, "Well, he wasn't until, but he is now."
He wasn't until now. He wasn't a part of the book club until now.
Yeah,
they're all Canadian here. They all say that.
All right, so yeah,
Oh,
I think
that's the
it's
other
about time for us
city
to
we
wrap
can-
up. One final quick announcement: this will be our new time we'll be streaming at. I will be posting this on YouTube hopefully sooner rather than later. Like I said, it has been absolute madness. Which thank you very much, everyone who has purchased things from us. We enjoy your love and support. The amount of stuff that's been ending up in Toys for Tots is mind blowing. We've almost we haven't covered the tree yet, but it's getting close. Yeah, it is so good. We are currently doing a deal right now for the week of Christmas, so the 21st to the 24th, from noon to 2. We are doing Young Adventures one shots. Tuesday is sold out, I think.
I think Tuesday is sold out.
Yeah, when I left at like 2, I think we had a couple more slots left open on most of the other days. But essentially what's going to be happening is the three of us will be coming up with an adventure, just a quick sort of self-contained adventure, and then we'll be running those for each of those days. Now, we are all going to be running the same adventure 4 times because coming up with 4 different adventures would be a giant pain in the butt. Don't get me wrong, we like playing D&D with kids, it's loads of fun, but it's also, again, exhausting. So, that means that the max that any one adventure can do is 3, because that means they'll be rotating between all of us seeing the different adventures we have to offer. For more information,
And the
visit...
different playstyles, too.
Yeah, exactly. ZulusGames.com. If you go to the shop store and then you go down to the bottom, there will be a holiday one-shot tab. That'll have more details there. If you have any questions about that, it's this side. Feel free to send us any question to zulusdnd@gmail.com. But yeah, I think that's it. Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, they can also find that on Facebook because there was a post.
Yes.
Just before
Yes.
this. So.
We did a Facebook post on that. But yeah. And if any questions about things, feel free to, just because it says D&D doesn't mean we don't talk about other things, as is evident from here.
Yeah, if you have a request, we can do that too.
Oh, I might here in a couple of weeks have us look into Gorkborg.
Oh yeah, the new one, the medalist game, whatever. That one has a age restriction on it, so
it
you're
does.
gonna have to check your ID before you watch that stream.
So yeah. Anyway, everyone, stay safe out there. Have a lovely time, and we will see you next time. Next week, same bat time. Until then, bye.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.